Ladies and gentlemen, start your Good afternoon or evening or morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the first round of the Honda Racing Simulator Championship. My name is Rennie Butler, bringing you the race action and everything happening around the Japanese track that we're visiting today with Cameron Rogers. And what a day it will be at the race here, Cameron, right?
It certainly will. First race of the season. We had the test race last week, but that means absolutely nothing. It is a clean slate for everyone, and this today is where the points are going to go on the standings.
We should quickly introduce the championship to everyone out there who is not familiar with it yet. Obviously, we're racing a Honda. We'll talk about that a bit later. And we're over in Japan at the beautiful circuit of Matsusaka here for round one race. And there will be amateur and a pro race. So don't be confused about the two races that you see down on the graphics right now. Cameron, give us a quick overview about how people got here before we dive into what will happen today.
Yeah, so at the end of June and beginning of July, there was a pre-qualification phase where drivers, well, anyone who registered could set their fastest laps on the server. And as soon as that closed on the 4th of July, the top 30 go into the pro division, then the next 30 between 31 and 60 then go into the amateur division, which is what we're going to have first here. The amateur division will have a 20-minute race, whereas the pros will have a 40-minute race, and we are doing these back-to-back, so we'll get you through the amateur race, then we'll move over to the pro guys and they'll have their own race as well.
Tons of action to come in your way out there, that's for sure, with all those racing happening. But let's talk about the actual car, because it is the Honda Racing Simulator Championship, proudly brought to you by Honda Prospect Moto and with the support of HM Engineering, obviously. The car that we will use today is maybe familiar to you, because it's a car you can see out on the street. Not in the version that we're racing here. It's obviously a built-up and fully bred race car, but it's based on the newest Honda Civic Type R, right?
Yes, it is. This based off, I believe, the 2018 model, but obviously it is a full race spec. So it has obviously proper suspension, has a bit more aerodynamics. It's got the big rear wing, as you'll see, and it's giving some pretty decent lap times. Obviously front wheel drive, a decent amount of power as well going through those front tyres. So it's a little bit tricky for the drivers, because a lot of drivers are obviously used to rear wheel drive platforms. So the front wheel drive is something a little bit different, as the front wheels have to turn and accelerate. So coming out of a corner, you have to be very precise with your inputs, and that's certainly something we saw a couple of drivers struggle with in the test race.
Definitely a different challenge to having the usual layout of rear-wheel drive, especially here with the Honda. It's a K20 engine, a 2-liter turbocharged engine. I actually own that street car, not the cool race version, unfortunately, because I would love that big wing on my car, I'll tell you that. Would work great on Nordschleife. But it is a car that you can rotate a lot just with acceleration or the use of the accelerator pedal. Is that something that you think specific drivers today will excel on, like being a front-wheel master, maybe?
I think that certainly is a factor. There'll be some drivers who are just a little bit more adapted to that style of driving. You can't just get mid-corner and then floor it like you do in a rear-wheel drive car, because the rear end doesn't come around. The front end just washes out. So you have to get your line very perfect. And especially when we get into the race, that is going to be very important. When you're exiting a corner, you need to make sure you get it absolutely perfect. Otherwise, the car behind you is going to be getting that slipstream and getting past you down the straights.
Slipstream will be important here on this racetrack, as you saw probably on the graphic, that they are long straight. There's a huge backstretch as well, coming down to a super fast left-hander, which might be actually a position to watch throughout the entire race, because a lot can happen there, especially a lot of mistakes, because it's not an easy corner at all. So we hope all the drivers will get through there just nicely. We're starting off with the 15-minute qualification, so everyone still has a chance to get around the track, get familiar with it, just in case they're not yet. I'm pretty sure they should be. And then we see who comes out on top. There's one driver that we probably should have our eyes on, or basically two that have been winners either of test race or fast and pre-qualification. They're not here, though, in the AM race, right?
Yes, they will be later in the AM race, but however, later in the pro race. But however, in the AM race right now, someone, or the couple of drivers to look out for is Shaquille for instance, currently second in the standings in the practice. He won the race last week in the test race, and also Eric Chandra, he got the fastest pre-qualification time as well. But what you mentioned is quite interesting about the track. They should know this track pretty well by now, because obviously they had a couple of weeks of pre-qualification, then they had a test race, and now they've had another week. So when we get to the next race in 2 weeks' time, they're only going to have 2 weeks to prepare for that race, and then after that the races are actually back to back, I believe. So it's going to be quite interesting how that works out as we get through the season. They get less and less preparation for each race. You got to learn these new tracks. It might, spice it up a little bit and change the order.
It's big thing to happen, but I actually hope that they get used to the car a bit more, because with every race situation, you are tackling on with your car. You get more familiar with how it reacts, how you can set it up correctly for a corner, and obviously how to do overtakes. So it will be interesting to see how many people already have that experience of really racing these cars. We know that doing a hot lap during the qualification is one thing, but being able to maneuver this car through traffic, while we see a big sideways entry into the double left. Wow, that was spectacular already for the beginning. Managed to catch the car again, so no crash there. That's good. But what I want to say is, you see the difference later on in the race, who actually practice in a race environment and who was just going for the fastest lap time.
That is certainly quite an important bit. Just, your qualifying pace, your absolute fastest lap isn't always the person who wins the race. You've got to get through the whole 20 minutes, A, without crashing, and B, without ruining your tyres so that you go slow at the end and things like that. As Shaquille actually goes back into the pit lane, so he won't be starting his lap. However, he does have just over 12 minutes left of the session, and this is a private session, so every driver is out on the track on their own. They can't see anyone else. It's just them, the track to themselves, and trying to set the fastest lap that they can.
We'll see. So far we don't have any laps in yet because people just did the out lap. We now see Richard Matthew on his first sector. Obviously no personal best yet, as you can see in the overlay, as everyone just having the first hot lap going on. It'll be a bit hard for us to actually spot all the different cars, because they're all beautiful Civics, but they just have that slight difference in shade and color. So I really hope you brought your glasses, Cameron.
Yes, fortunately we got actually number panels on them this week as well, and we got the little the icons working this week as well. So hopefully you should be able to work out pretty much who is who. But obviously we'll take you through that as much as possible, as we're now sitting at seeing Arya Senna coming through this double left-hand a bit more smooth than Shaquille early on, who we were watching as he comes out onto this back straight, where we'll get up to the top speed on the track, which I believe is about 240 kilometers an hour. But they actually have to brake coming into 130R, which makes it such a tricky corner, as it is. It's fairly tight in one of these cars. Then you run it out all over that curb before you get to the final chicane, where you need to really pick your braking zone. Use these curbs as much as you can to get the lap time, and then just go flat out and hold it to the inside and see what lap time you get.
There's always this balance between trying to cut over the curb and also not losing traction on the front tires, because as you said earlier in today's show, obviously have every task is onto the front tires, like steering in the right direction, accelerating the car, braking the car. All of that will be done by the front axle. So it's very important to keep that in balance, keep that in check. We'll see two purple sectors here for Audi. That's coming around with number 3 on the car, if I'm not mistaken. It's teal blue color here coming over the line, which is our quickest lap time so far. I'm not sure how many we got in there already. I'm just waiting for my tool to update. So the current fastest lap time is at 2 minutes 6.011.
So that's actually quicker than last week. Last week, the pole position in the test race was a 6.2, so the driver's improving a little bit from last week. However, the best possible time was a 5.8, so I think there's a couple more tenths in it, but look how close it is at the top. Only 2 tenths between the top 2 and 4 tenths back to Saputra in 3rd place.
It's basically a second between 1st and 8th right now, so it will be very hard to be at front of this grid, even if this is called the amateur grid. It doesn't mean that the drivers aren't quick at all. Or we see Prasanta coming around last corner, now heading over start-finish once again to 8.5, which currently is, even if it doesn't sound that bad, it's 17th, which is second to last from the guys that already went across the line. So we see it here, everyone is super tight and bunched up in terms of lap times.
And we still got half the grid. Yeah, we only got 18 times, 30 drivers here, so got almost half the grid to still set their times. But some people, as we saw, made some mistakes on that outlap, and also the cut tracks are activated. So if you do cut the track, your lap time will be removed.
I want to make sure that everyone stays clean here across this track. Obviously, we know that race drivers love to extend the track here and there a bit, right? Trying to make the best out of the tarmac that you have available. But still, there are rules to follow, and that's for every driver around the world. Doesn't matter if it's real racing or sim racing. So stay inside the boundaries, and then you might make it up the field. Current difference, by the way, between first and second is 0.1 of a second. That's nothing. That's more or less shifting slightly earlier or later instead of doing the exact same thing.
And yeah, last week it was the top four were within 1/10 of a second. So I'm expecting it to be just as close between some of these drivers as well. But we still have a couple of the faster guys, such as Shaquille, your race winner last time, to set a lap time as well. I think Richard Matthew, he was quite high up last week. So there's still a few guys to set their laps, and obviously they will get possibly 3, maybe 4 attempts over the course of the 15-minute session.
I actually had a look in the background at Shaquille, and it seems like he's struggling getting his tires up to temperature, because I can see him sliding a lot. Others have that car way more under control, so I wonder if he's just struggling with pressure in the tires and getting everything on working temperature to really do a fast lap time here. It should be on screen right now. Yep, that's the 24th position right now, because he is without a time. We saw his big slide early on, and now he wants to finally get across the line with a real timing set to get up on that leaderboard. So far, we're waiting for the last 5 drivers, basically, or it's 6 actually, that still have to get a time on the board. One of them is Shaquille in the number 8 Honda Civic here. One chicane, and then the right-hander before coming up to start-finish straight. You can see those brake discs glowing. Obviously, there's so much power that you have to brake into that corner. It's like you're fully in the brake, trying to get it to stop as quick as possible. 2.7.0. You said he will be one of the fast guys. He is, but even the 27.0 is only 12th position right now.
That is quite interesting. He did a 6.2 last week, so he's still got some time left in the tank from him. But someone who's on a good lap is Arya Senna, coming out onto the back straight. Purple first sector with a 47.4. Couple of tenths faster than some other guys on laps at the moment as well. But we will get the second sector split right at the end of this straight before going into 130R, and we will see. Yeah, he's got personal best in that middle sector as well. So 7th place at the moment. I think he's going to be making some improvements here.
Bit of wiggling rear there coming out of the left-hander, but still managed to keep it tight. Now across those curbs that he has to cut. I think there was a bit of room left there on the left kink of it. Now around the corner, trying to stay as far inside as possible, not running around on the outside doing unnecessary meters, basically, to 6.9. That is 7th position currently.
He stayed in the same position despite improving. However, look ahead of him. There's 4 drivers all on a 2-minute 6.6, which is quite incredible. As we just had someone jump up there. I think that was 2nd place. Adir Saputra getting up. He's only 3 thousandths of pole position.
Yeah, he's new in 2nd reign. Adir Saputra. I'm really sorry if I mispronounced the names, guys. I'll do my best. As he said, he's not far off. He's actually now in the now down to 3rd, because Rio Loho is listed with a 2-minute 5.9 as the new pole time. Also, Colin Louis, he's new on 6th. He managed to jump into the top 5 right before we had a new leader. But 2 minutes and 5 seconds, that is really quick lap time. Like the amateur grade, it really put on the show in the qualification already.
That first 2-minute 5 that we have had in the amateur categories, we now see Sathya come round to the final corner, just dropped down to 11th place as someone improved, but where can he put himself? He goes up to 7th position there. So it's getting really close at the top, as we've only got 4.5 minutes left.
Not much time for some of the people to actually get up in the top 10 at least. We see Tieku Muammar, who's still without a time. He's currently on his outlap, if I see that correctly. Skiputra is on 4th with a 2:06.3 currently. See if he can actually get a faster lap time. A yellow sector in the first one. Not really what he wants to see. 0.5 already up to the leader. This tight hairpin is... There's so many different lines through that tight hairpin, but whichever line you choose, you always have the feeling you're way too slow.
Yeah, it's an awkward corner because you've got the little kink just before you get on the brakes as well. So it's a very tricky corner, especially in these cars, trying to get them rotated as much as you can. Certainly one of the harder parts of the track. And it's to be honest, it's actually quite a difficult track to have the first race of the season. As obviously we go to some of the best tracks that we have on R-Factor 2 across the course of the 6 races here. But today at Matsushita, this is certainly one of the more difficult ones.
It is. There's so many changes in pace and dynamics. Not easy. While on my screen I see Muammar out of the boundaries on his first lap. So it seems like this will not count towards his qualification time. No, he completely cut the chicane off there, right behind Skiputra. So that was the car in the background. You might saw it blinking around the corner. He will not get onto the board. Also, Jason not able to win anything. Still 4th on the grid, and we're running out of time. That's what's happening right now. And only one driver, Rio Low, currently in the 5-second mark.
Yeah, that's quite a good time at the moment. However, he's less than a 1/10 of a second in pole position at the moment. So if anyone improves just that tiny bit, as we see Devan Ugraha coming along the back straight, he's going to come across sector 2. So actually purple in that middle sector according to that graphic as well. So I think he's going to be challenging here for the pole position.
Amazingly how he cut the curb there on that entry. Now let's see, under braking, coming very close to the inside red. That looked good. Amazing line throughout the chicane. Let's see if he can carry on that momentum from the second split. It's running a bit wide there over the line though. 2 minutes 5.9. That is the second lap time in that range, but unfortunately it's 0.080 of the actual pole setter right now. So even though he got below that remarkable mark of 2.6, he's not yet in the lead.
And Alfandani has gone just behind him, only 1/1000, so 100th of a second behind as well. So it's very close, less than a 10th of a second between the top 4 once again.
It's really like looking at the top 5, it's 0.1 of a second between 1st and 5th. So just imagine them going into the first lap all together. That will be an amazing sight here in the AM category. Who are we on board with right now? We're still running for a fast lap. Let's see on the scoreboard if there's anyone. As said before, Muammar still without a lap time. While we're on board with Shaquille in the number 8 Honda Civic. On his outlap, there's still 50 seconds. That will not be enough for him
Yeah,
to
he's
get
not
another
going to
shot.
make it.
Colin
Almost
Louis, though, is on a hot lap. Look at the hot lap, hot entry.
Wow, that's exactly what can happen in a front-wheel drive car if you lock up those rear tyres. He's really pushed it. He's what's that? Almost 4/10 of a second down in that first sector. So he's got a bit to make up, which is probably why he's pushing so much. And just to let you know, the drivers have to start their lap within the session, so they've only got 18 seconds left to start their lap, which is why Shaquille will not be able to get around in time.
And they can do that here in qualification, really use all of that rubber available on those rims, but it's not how it will work later on in the race, because you have to preserve your tyres a bit on those front-wheel driven cars, high-powered and all that. You want to make sure, that was definitely a cut, you want to make sure that the tyres are still alive in the later half of the race, and it's probably a factor that will become even bigger later on in the pro race, as they will race a bit longer, right?
Yeah, 40 minutes for the pro race, so twice the distance for those guys. So they will have to definitely think about their tyres, as there is a decent amount of drop-off as Louis doesn't improve. I think we still have a couple of other drivers on their laps. Got Sapucha, he's going round as well in 7th place, but pretty much everyone else at the front is in the pit lane, so that is pretty much sorted unless Sapucha can keep improving in this middle sector.
It will be interesting to see if he maybe can drop to a low 2 minutes and 6 seconds. Also, Chesa, the number 30th car, in a fast lap, 0.7 off in the second sector already. Oh, that entry is so hard to nail. You want to cut that curb a bit, but if it's unsettling the car too much, then you lose control running wide and that lap is gone. Invalid immediately. So it's hard to really keep that balance there. But it looks like Rio Loho will start from pole in the very first round of the Honda Racing Simulator Championship with an impressive time of 2 minutes 5 seconds, 0.916. And then followed by Divanu Graha on second place and Dani on third. Obviously, we'll have a look at the grid before we go into the race. Saputra, that was a purple sector though in sector 1 there.
I think he might be able to make some improvements from his 7th place. He's only a few thousandths off the car ahead, so he might even jump up into 6th place. Just depends how he's done this final sector and across the line. Last lap of the session, where is he going to put himself? He's going to go to, he stays in 7th place. So as you say,
all that builds up for nothing. Unfortunately, not enough for him to actually make it. That's the grid going into our very first race here. Low on first, Devanugraha on second, Dani third, Adisa Putra on fourth, and then Shakil on 5, Matthew 6, Siputra, Hendamo, Andika, and Satya to actually close off our top 10.
That is quite interesting that Herdamo's down in 8th place as he got the pole position last time, and Saputra was 2nd. He's now in 7th, so there's certainly some different people at the front here, and I'm sure we're going to get a very good race. But while these drivers just get a little rest and a warm session, we'll take a few messages from our sponsors.
The power of dreams. I am the front man who drives. My power keeps me ahead in the front line. My reputation gets me on the front page. This is how I drive superiority. By being in the front row. New Honda Civic Turbo.
Back again here in Matsusaka for race number 1 in round number 1 of the Honda Racing Simulator Championship, brought to you by Honda Prospect Motor and HM Engineering. We're at Matsusaka in Japan. We just finished the 15-minute qualification of the amateur race. Now we're heading into a 20-minute race before we then do the same on the pro side of things. So if you're a bit late to the stream, no worries. There's still a lot of racing action coming your way. And with the field that we just had in the qualification, I can tell you that this first amateur race here will be a good one. I'm absolutely certain about that. First 5 in 0.1 of a second. It's definitely the first factor for a good race. Just hope that they all kind of survive turn 1, right, Cameron?
Yeah, they definitely want to survive that turn 1. 20 minutes is still a long enough race that you don't have to risk everything on that first lap. You need to make sure you're keeping your car alive and getting those all-important points, because the championship is only 6 races long, which is really not too long. We start here in Matsuzaka, and then we move to, in 2 weeks' time, we go to Malaysia, then we go to Silverstone, Sao Paulo, Zandvoort, and then we finish in Portugal on the 29th of August. There's 25 points up for grabs for the winner, and that goes all the way down to 15th position, so a slightly elongated, like Formula 1 style points system. So there's not too much time really to get all of those points in, so you really need to make sure you're keeping your car alive and you're getting to the end of that race.
Always about finishing, and if you can finish in the points, it's even better. Finishing without points is always a bit disappointing, but there are only 15 positions that will get you some points, so there will be 30 drivers trying to get on these 15 position will be very interesting. As I said already, it's a long enough race to not risk everything in turn 1, but on the other hand, everyone who's racing himself knows exactly it's very hard to stay back in turn 1. If you see that big gap opening, and then half a second later that big gap was not even big enough for Smart to get through, and then you're in a lot of trouble actually on that one.
Yeah, we did see some coming together, let's put it that way, in the test race. So hopefully a couple of drivers have learnt, maybe the width of the car and how it races, because especially in a front-wheel drive application, if you are slightly behind someone and you hit their rear with your front, they generally go for a bit of a spin because all the weight is in the front of these cars, so the rear are fairly loose. So if you, even on a straight, you can just spin some around so easily, so you do have to be pretty careful with how you go racing. But I think there was only 1 or 2 penalties after the first race, so hopefully everyone will keep it nice and calm as they did there, and hopefully we get some good racing here for 20 minutes.
Yeah, penalties always hurt, but we also know that if there would never be penalties, then probably they didn't try it hard enough. Racing is just yeah, racing is just how that works, right? I mean, I do my fair bit of real racing since last year as well. And sometimes you need to figure out where the limit is, either the limit of the car or the limit of your skill set, or the skill set of the driver right next to you. So we'll see how that turns out here in the amateur race, and then if there is actually a big difference between what we'll see in the pro race. You explained that a bit earlier in today's show. Obviously, that was a hot lap qualifier, and then the first 30 went to pro, and the next 30 went to amateur. So it's not like there must be a huge gap in terms of racecraft. They could all be on the same level.
Yeah, the difference was 2 seconds between the top of the pro category and the top of the AM category in the pre-qualifier. However, for the pole position last week in the test race, it was about 1.2 seconds. So I definitely think these sort of, in quotation marks, lower drivers are starting to get a bit more of a feel, because obviously in the pro race we got people like Maulana and Stanley, and they've raced in things such as the R-Factor 2 GT Pro Series and things like that, which is obviously the top level of R-Factor 2. So there's some really good drivers in that pro category, and this AM category is more for the drivers who are still trying to get used to it. Sim racing is still fairly new in Indonesia, so it's great that HM Engineering, along with Honda Prospect Motor, are putting on this championship for these drivers to get used to it, and hopefully as the season progresses they can make even more improvements and get closer to the front.
It will get more interesting from race to race, I'm sure, but that will we see. I think everyone's getting onto the grid, getting the cars ready. Tires are not warmed up. That means going into turn 1 with cold brakes and slightly colder tires is something to consider. Braking distance will be a bit longer, so not as harsh as they might used to, but they are getting ready. Once again, that's the grid for you. Rio Loho, he will lead into turn 1, at least if his start is fairly decent, I would say. Otherwise, he might be back in the pack already, but he should be first into turn 1, followed by Devanu Graha, and then Dani on a 3rd position. As you can see with the lap times from qualification, it was fairly close between our top 10. So every one of these guys is a potential race leader after the start into turn 1. Obviously, they will do a warm-up lap, so don't get confused right now that you see the cars moving in the background.
Yeah, certainly one of the most important parts of the race is that first lap. But as you mentioned before, you don't need to throw away your position, especially if you're in that sort of 4th, 5th, maybe 6th place. That is the position. You're in such a good position. You can still get to the front of the grid, but you just don't need to ruin the opportunity in the first lap. So hopefully they just keep it all nice and safe. However, we are racing. We are racing for prizes. We are racing for points. So everything that you do is obviously worth that. So actually, in the amateur category, we have prizes for the top 5 in the championship at the end of the 6 races. We got 5 million rupees plus a trophy for the winner. Then it goes down to 4 million for second, 3 for third, 2 million for fourth, and 1 million for the 5th place driver as well. So plenty of money to be fighting out for these drivers, and that obviously means people are going to be taking a little bit of risk.
In the end, it's called racing and not your Sunday shopping tour, so driving will be slightly different. One last chance now for everyone to warm up tires and warm up the brakes. Especially into this hairpin, you will want the car to perform at its absolute best. Otherwise, it will not work or will not go well into that. Maybe we should talk about the Honda Civic that we have on screen just a little bit. As you said, it's the bit based on the 2018 model. I think the FK8, which is the chassis code for this car, was introduced in 2017. I bought mine in 2018. That should be correct then. It is a car that, first of all, Honda is a brand with obviously a heritage in motorsport, and then there's the Type R badge, which is obviously known around the world. And the new Honda Civic FK8 was quite successful already in the few years that it's now being used in motorsport. I think it's currently one of or the most successful TCR car, for example. It won its class in the Nürburgring 24 Hours in 2019. So a car that is basically grabbing trophies all around the globe.
Yeah, and it's obviously a spec car for all of these drivers, so they've got the same engine, the same aerodynamics, everything, so it's all down to these drivers, but they can make setup changes, which is where drivers might find a little bit here or there, but it's certainly a very good car in real life, and how it's been translated into the simulation of R-Factor 2 has also been really good. But the drivers are just now gridding up as the last drivers come around the final corner, and once they grid up, we will get the 5 red lights and start the first race of the season.
A lot of cars, as you can see, 30 in total here for round 1 of the Honda Racing Simulator Championship. And it seems like everyone got back safely from the warm-up lap, so we're just waiting for the lights to actually go red before they then turn off, go green. And we start racing here at Matsusaka, going down to turn 1, which is basically a double right. So not an easy corner at all, especially if you're a bit fast. It's hard to brake while still steer this car as everything is done with the front wheels. Is everyone in place at the grid? Last time for them to take a deep breath before we launch into round 1. There we got the first red lines. We will start round 1 of the Honda Racing Simulator Championship, and we go green here. Racing is on. Loho leads the pack into turn 1. It seems like Shaquille had a great start. He's already side by side with Adisa Putra going into turn 1. That's 3 wide, actually. You see that in the back, that the 3 cars right behind the 2 leaders here, but Loho totally uncontested into the right-hander. That went great for him. Also, Divanugraha is still in second. Dani in third. Adisaputra in fourth. But Dani now, he's overtaken by Adisaputra. That's the blue Civic. You see slightly wide in the left-hander. Can he actually make sure to close the inside line? He can. So he went up 1 position. But it seems like they changed back already again. There's a lot of stuff happening in and on the track right now, but Loho, he wants to run away, but Divanugraha is already behind him, right, locked onto the rear, making sure that leader's not getting away without a fight here.
There's a couple of cars off the track. We've got Nicholas Argo and Adi Verman towards the back, going for a bit of a spin, but that first sector was fairly clean for most of the drivers, and these top 2 at the front, Loho and Divanugraha, are very sort of starting to pull away a little bit, 1.5 seconds after only half the lap.
We didn't saw it on camera, but Shakil got a quick nudge at the rear in the hairpin. He was a bit slow there. It seems like he overshot the apex. Siputra now side by side. That's between 6th and 7th. The other driver is Hendar Mo. That's trying to defend his position here, but it seems like Siputra is a bit faster around the outside, making the pass here in the dark green Honda Civic with the number 14 on. And right in front of him, that is Alfandani in 5th now. So he dropped behind Shakil. It seems like he was capable of being a bit quicker in the last sector.
Yeah, I think there's some contact there between Shaquille and Danny just ahead of the camera as we went into the spoon corner, which is what caused there to be a bit of a change of position. But these front 2 especially, they're fighting so hard as we get to the end of lap 1. It's going to be about a 10-lap race if we look at what it was last week in the test race. So that's just for reference, roughly what we're going to be seeing. But they're coming through this start-finish straight for the first time at full racing speed.
And lap 1 is in the books. Loho is still in the lead, but we can see that Divanuagra is still right behind him in the teal Honda Civic. And it seems like Loho really needs to cover the inside line more and more during that lap 1. We saw that in the chicane before they finished lap 1. They had to be on a slightly more aggressive line, making sure that he does not open the door too wide for the second position to slip through there, just to keep you up with everything else that's happening. Hendarmo is now still in... Oh, no, he's still in 7th. Siputra on 6th, Dani on 5th, and then Shaquille on 4th, so nothing changed with the top 8 in the last corners. We also lost one driver already. I can see Colin Louis just coming into the pits right now. He is missing the rear wing, looking a bit like the normal Civic Sport with 1.5 litre engine now, as the big rear wing is missing. That will not help in his race pace, so I fear that will be the end for Louis here in race number 1. And it seems like Devanagara is not yet okay with just being second. We see him trying lines out left and right from Loho.
Yeah, Loho's having to defend a bit here. He's not going to run away with this one, even though they've still pulled away a little bit from the cars behind, but they're certainly going to be fighting all the way. But, well, oh, big crash just behind them. Shaquille, I think he got on the grass. He's taken out Addison Putra as well. That was a huge crash there from Shaquille. Sorry, just had to scream there. But Shaquille got it all wrong coming into that corner. He's now dropped down to 7th place. And I believe the car he hits is dropping down even more.
Yeah, that was a harsh one there. Launching like a rocket over the grass. There's obviously not much grip available. We also saw Devanugraha actually trying first attack on that long left-hander before going to the chicane, but it didn't work out, so he's still second. The battle on your screen right now, that's around 3rd to 7th. So basically everyone bunched up again after the end of lap 2. We're trying to make up some positions now that Shaquille had that big launch and shunt there in the double left into, I think it was Spoon there. He's now in the slipstream, going down to turn 1. He will try on the far inside. That will not work. Making contact with Antika, and both go off, spin into the wall. I do not want to judge a call immediately, but it seems like Shaquille is a bit on the hot side right now.
Yeah, that's 2 accidents in the space of half a lap with 2 different drivers as well, so that's not ideal. I'm sure maybe the stewards will end up looking at that one after the race as well, but that has messed up the order quite a bit in that sort of top 10 area. We've now got Danny in 3rd, Putra in 4th, Herdamo in 6th, then we've got Matthew, Chandra, Satya and Shahab to round out the top 9 as well, so it's all changed towards the front of the field.
Definitely now a bit bigger gaps there behind 1st and 2nd. As you can see, 1st and 2nd still unchanged. They're still fighting for the lead here in round 1. Lower a bit wide there, coming out of the hairpin. That is a big chance actually, but as he said already, these are spec'd cars, so they have the same amount of power available, the same amount of grip available coming out of the turn, and slight mistakes in the lines are rarely enough to really get side by side or even make the pass. It might give you that inch to actually get your nose into one of the corners. But what's happening with Loho right now? Is it the pressure actually catching on to him? Because he's running wide the last 3 corners, and now that's really, really tight here between 1st and 2nd.
And he's getting the slipstream coming down towards 130i. He's got his nose alongside. Can he get far enough? No, he's just going to slightly back out of that one, going to 130r, which has actually lost him a couple of car lengths, but can he make it up all under braking? Yes, he can, and this is where he needs to set himself up, as Loho goes a bit wide there in both of the apexes. So can he get a good exit and get the slipstream down to turn number 1?
Oh, we got side-by-side action in the chicane. Matthew and Sapphire, that's 8th and 7 for a bit of nudging coming out of the chicane. It was not enough space for both cars running the same line. Well, that was a beautiful maneuver here by Sapphire. I'm really sorry for the mispronunciations of those names, but he tried to cover the inside line going into the chicane, and they still made it side by side. Yes, there was a bit of rubbing coming out of the chicane, but other than that, it was quite nice to watch. Same, by the way, for 1st and 2nd, Loho and Devanagara. They're still fighting. He's still close. So it seems like Loho currently, in terms of lap time, definitely not capable of running away.
Yeah, I think he's got slightly less rear wing angle as well, because it certainly seems he's not quicker in the corners, as you mentioned, but then as soon as they get onto the straights, he's got just enough top speed to defend. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's running slightly less rear wing, as we've got another DNF who is Arya Senna, so that's 2 DNFs in the first 3 laps of this race.
That's getting heated up so quickly, and we can see sometimes things go wrong. But you're right, it seems like the difference in line could come from the different settings of those rear wings, as Lowo is quite quick on the straights. The fight that you now got on your screen, that is Ciputra on 4th and Alfandani in the red and black Honda Civic in front of him. If Ciputra can actually close that gap once again. They have been separated quite a bit due to Shakil's maneuver early on, which kind of destroyed the fighting group that we had from 3rd to 7th. Shakil currently in 14th for everyone who's interested in that. He's trying to close the gap to Adi Saputra, who was also in the top 5 before the mistakes happened there. So these two drivers are expected to make their way back. Talking about making their way back, it seems like Lowe is once again in desperate need here to cover the inside line. He's holding on to the lead for just another lap. Wow, this is a lot of pressure he has to work with, and he has to withstand here in the first laps. That's not an easy task at all.
It certainly isn't, especially when, I mean, I was saying this in the break, he was 19th in the test race last week, so he's found a lot of pace, and maybe he's not quite used to running at the front of a grid, and he's certainly handling the pressure well so far, as we've just gone over 9 minutes of the race, so just under 11 minutes left in this race.
Yeah, still a lot of laps to come for these two. So a lot of opportunities to defend and attack. Back to Ciputra and Dani. 3rd and 4th. Oh no, that's actually not 3rd and 4th. I'm sorry, that's just the same colours of the cars. This is actually Satya and Chandra.
Lowe's lost the lead. Somewhere in the Dunlop curve. He must have gone wide. That is not a normal place to overtake, so he must have gone wide in one of those corners, but either way, he's dropped down into 2nd place, and he's going to have to fight back, or does he not have the pace to catch back up?
I want to say, like, there had to be a mistake, as he just said, because that gap is quite significant for spec race cars with the overtaking that just happened, especially since we saw Loho being on the defensive line quite early in the corners, trying to make sure that there's absolutely no room for anyone to slip through, but now he fell down to 2nd. Let's see if he really has that advantage of the faster car on the straight. Then this moment should be where he closes the gap and considers an attack, or at least showing himself in the rearview mirror a bit more dominant. But he's not really coming close to edging a bit. Obviously, slipstream helps, but the corner should be now. Yeah, we see them braking, slightly getting the way to the front. It seems like Lowe is not really coming closer here.
Oh, it gets quite deep there in the chicane. Misses that first apex, which is going to lose him a car length or two on the exit. And I'll see how this battle develops now halfway through the race. Can he hold on even for that 2nd place? Because it seems like he's dropped by almost 7/10 of a second at the end of that lap.
Yeah, I think he went a bit too hot into that chicane. He really wanted to close that gap, and it didn't work. There's side by side once again. That's 17th, 18th, 19th, by the way. A Fiat, Kortubi and Chisa, they all going at each other. We see that bit wide here through the last turn. That might give the upper hand to Chisa, who is now on the right. That's the inside for turn 1. Behind that is Antika looking at this group as well. But Chisa decided to brake a bit earlier, and that was actually a smart move. Look at that. Kortubi actually launching it over the apex. They're losing the spot to Chisa, who's now up to 18th. So, yeah, sometimes braking earlier is a good move.
Yeah, especially when you're battling someone who... contact behind there as he kept it. No, he hasn't. That's Andika going off the track a little bit. Can he keep it on the road? Yes, he can. But he's lost about a second there. That is what happens if you, as I mentioned before, touch the front and rear of a front-wheel drive car. Gets a little bit loose,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. There was another mistake. Matthew and Donko Kambe are now in a fight here in the hairpin. It seems like Matthew did a mistake. He was losing a lot of speed before that happened, and now small nudge that will also give way to Shahab to get 9th position. Matthew dropping 2 here in this battle. But there was a problem before. He was really off pace going into that hairpin, which is why Dondo Kambe actually came that close.
Yeah, it's a bit of contact here in the midfield. Obviously, contact or motorsport is a non-contact sport, but sometimes little nudges are accepted. Oh, someone's gone off the track there. Who's that? That's Dento Ari in 14th place. Has just been dropped back. Shaquille, I think, just nudged him slightly wide on the exit of that corner coming out onto the back straight. It was actually Adisaputra, I think, who is now battling with Shaquille. But look at Shaquille, dropped all the way down to 12th place after the different issues that he has had in this race.
He was down to 15th or 16th even, so he got back, but I'm not sure how the stewards will actually see his comeback here, because it seems like he's a bit on the harsh side, making way for his Honda Civic. Also, Satya now on the back of Chandra, that's 6th and 7th. And it seems like Satya had the way better laps through the last way around the circuit, because he was able to close that gap quite significantly. So there will be the next fight while we stay on Shaquille to see if he can actually hold on to 12th position, but it's looking good. I mean, he should have that pace, to be honest, to get back to the top 10. It's all about how much is he in control of the car and of his own temper, because we know that there's so many good drivers out there for that as long as they're in the zone, they're absolutely unstoppable. But they can be as quick as they want. If they lose the rhythm, if they're out of their comfort zone, and they get even a bit angry, then sometimes weird things happen on track.
They certainly can. You got to keep a cool head. Most, especially in sim racing, you don't really have the physical side, but you definitely have to have the mental side to keep yourself calm and relaxed when you are in a fight and not get, as you say, hot-headed. And then you start making mistakes and you start potentially getting yourself penalties.
And we saw him running white there once again, so it seems like he's really struggling keeping everything under control. I wonder, Cameron, do you think it could be his tires already? Do you think he might overdid it on the previous 15 minutes?
Considering he spun a couple of times as well, that could certainly be part of the issues, as the tire and the tire performance is very important in R Factor 2. So if you have some spins and that sort of stuff, that can really damage you later in the race, even in a 20-minute race.
Leader is still unchanged. Divanugraha is still in the lead after taking it from Loho, but Loho is back. It's under half a second between them sometimes. We had that was Adisa Putra on the screen. He was also inside the top 5 before that incident with Shaquille. So these two are basically back together, and I saw him nudging him in the chicane there. But we're having our eyes here on the front on Loho and Divanugraha. I'm really sorry. It's actually really hard. He's still defending position at 1, but I have to say, it seems like Loho found his pace again.
Yellow is certainly coming back at him as we've completed 7 laps of this race. He's staying with him, and even Alf and Danny isn't letting them get too far away either. So these three could be closing up a little bit as we get towards the final couple of laps of this race. Just about to hit 4 minutes to go of the 20. But what can Loho do? Really sending it through the first Degner there. He's pushing very hard, but can he just get the exit out of... That's really what you have to focus on, especially the spoon corner out onto the back straight. It's such an important corner that you need to get right if you want to make an overtake.
We have been wondering if he's running a lower rear wing, and if he does so, then this is an even harder task now, because such a hard task as these guys staying on the tarmac, it seems. But actually following someone in dirty air, in the slipstream, if you have the lower rear wing, it's not easy with these front-wheel drive cars. Battle for 14th, that's actually quite heated up now. Argo, Prasanta, and Ari. Prasanta running a bit wide there in the hairpin, but it wasn't enough for Ari to slip through, so nothing changed there. But there will be some positions to look at for sure here in the last 3 minutes now. Adisa Putra is not behind Shaquille anymore after that. Oh, nudge! That was very deep into that quick left-hander for Ari. And I think he really had to slam the brakes there to not run into Prasanta, which cost him here the contact to that group. Nicely done though, because I really think he was on the brakes to avoid contact here.
And that 15th place is the final 1 point that is being allocated here. So he is not going to be getting a point as Loho's getting even closer into turn number 1, closing up heavily on the brakes actually. So I think he definitely has the ability, but he just can't find his way past at the moment. He keeps on slightly messing up that final chicane, which is losing him some car lengths as they get out of the final corner as well. So I do think he has the ability and the speed to get past. He just needs to be a little bit more clean with his racing line.
We know it's one thing to actually close the gap, it's a completely different task to actually make it past someone, and these two have been fighting the other way around for, let's say, nearly the first half of the race, and now it's this story converted to Loho trying to chase down Devanugraha here for the lead, and it's this lap and the next one that he has time to actually make a move, and we know how crucial it is sometimes then to not make the move right now and just wait for that one perfect moment, because if he's not making it stick, if he's trying to get around Devanugraha and he's not succeeding, then he might not have another chance before the end of the race.
And I do think they're going to get one more lap after this because they got 1 minute 30 to go. I do think they'll make it to the start-finish line, which means we will have one more lap, which means he has, I think that's 3, maybe 4 more good opportunities on the back straights. Can he get close enough? He's dropped off a little bit, coming through Spoon Corner, goes a little bit wide. Can he keep that into the second apex? Yes, he can, so he's still within a chance, but he's not quite close enough on this occasion.
Two completely driving styles here on first and second. We see Loho being always super late in the brakes, really diving deep into the turn, and Devanugraha way more clean on the outside. He's more like slow in, fast out, and Loho is the opposite. And this leads to this weird battle where it seems like no one really has an advantage to actually make it through.
Getting that advantage is all they need to, but once again he messes up that final chicane just a little bit, which drops him back just enough that he is going to struggle to get past in this first sector. He needs to make sure he gets a clean first and second sector here to set up as we come onto the final lap. 20 seconds to go. This will be the final lap of the race. He just needs to keep it nice and clean and get himself set up for that back straight.
And he had enough of laps now to look for weaknesses of the leader, to try to find where he could be quicker, because every turn he will only have once now to actually make a move. There's no looking and deciding for next lap anymore. It is the final lap. So if Loho wants to take the first win in round 1 of the Honda Racing Simulator Championship, then he has to make his move now. But also interesting how close Alfandani came. That's the car you see right behind Loho. So if these two do not get everything sorted on the entry of a corner, we might see Dani getting involved all of a sudden.
We certainly might, as this is, as we say, a final lap, so it's all or nothing for these drivers. And if you see a gap, you can bet every dollar that you've got that they're going to go for it.
Definitely should. Look at that. We had 20 minutes of racing, and these are the top 3. Really shows how racing will be here in the Honda Racing Simulator Championship. That's what we expect from every single round and every single race here. 2 races per event, obviously, and with the pros coming a bit later. Back to 6, that's Chandra and Satya. I said already, Satya really put in some good lap times to close that gap onto Chandra, but as there's only half a lap left to actually figure out a way around that black and red Civic in front of him. Loho now, last long slipstream. There will be a quick left-hander, slight braking into that, a lot of cutting over the curbs. He has to close the gap, not making the move here, but then looking at the last chicane, if he wants to be the winner here. But look how close Dani also came. This would be very interesting now for the last chicane. Seems like Devanugraha really had a great exit there. Late braking from Loho. Devanugraha tries to cover the inside line. That was the mistake. That could be the chance for Loho. He's actually side by side. There will be a right-hander. Perfect situation for him here to take the lead on the very last lap. That will be Loho taking the win of round number 1 in the AM category. And what an impressive finish here.
That was an amazing move. He did the exact right thing. He made Devanugraha make a mistake in that braking zone of the final chicane. He did everything perfect, and he got around the outside of that second apex. Really good driving from Loho there to take the 25 points and the first victory of the season. So we have the other drivers just coming across the line now to finish their respective races.
Devanugraha, I think the issue here was, before that, his clean exits were always enough to not be on a crazy defensive line, right? when he was looking at the breaking point for the chicane, he covered the inside line. He saw Lowell moving to the outside, and instead of staying on the inside line, he decided to try to get back on the ideal line under braking. Like, he basically had to lift the brakes a bit and then slam them again, and that messed up the entire braking zone for him there into the first right king, opening the door for Loho, getting us this side-by-side finish on the very first race. I would say we couldn't have started any better into the Honda Racing Simulator Championship than this.
That is certainly what we're going to be looking for over the course of these 6 races. And yeah, what a race that was in the end. He waited till the absolute perfect time to make his move, and what a move it was. But we have obviously a couple of other drivers just racing to the line here. Muammar for 26th position there. Now we have another couple of drivers coming into the final chicane. We've got Julius and Moko Dompet, although actually Julius has gone wide to cut the final chicane on that last lap to finish the 10 laps here of the category, and then we can run you through the unofficial results. So obviously there might be a couple of penalties post-race, but we will see what happens with that. But as it stands, these are the results from the first race of the season.
Lowell, obviously our winner, Devan Nugraha, the unlucky guy here in the chicane, losing the lead after having it for half a race. Dani on third, more or less, I would say a calm race for him. Siputra on fourth, Hendamo on fifth. That are the top 5. Obviously, we missed the names of Shakila, who had that incident, or like 2 incidents. The same for, I think we lost Adi Saputra, who was supposed to be in this top 5 looking at the qualification. So that gave Chandra Satya and Dondok Kambe the actual chance to get in here. Richard Matthew, he was a bit struggling in the race. We saw him fighting there early on where he did that slight mistake going into the hairpin. He was dropping 2 positions at that moment. But that are the top 10 of round number 1. As Cameron said already, obviously we have to wait for the stewards to take all the decisions on the several incidents we had. Although I have to say, we're talking about touring cars here, and Robin is racing, and we know that touring cars are meant to be tough. It was a really good race, even though we had those incidents.
Yeah, touring cars, as you say, they allow a little bit of a nudging, but you still can't ram people off. And obviously, for instance, Shaquille, unfortunately, had a couple of accidents in that first part of the race. And as you see, we're getting the rundown for the final 10 drivers. And as you see, Louis and Senna both, unfortunately, having a DNF from the race. But that is not all the racing. We have the pro race, which is obviously slightly faster drivers, slightly more experienced drivers, and they'll be racing for 40 minutes in just a few moments' time. We'll be moving over to the pro class. But until then, we'll take a couple of minutes break to get over there, and we will see you in a few minutes after these messages.
The power of dreams. power of dreams.
You're looking for a diamond in the rough, and I could be quite tough.
Honda Civic Hatchback RS. Sexiness intensified. Experience RS. A pleasure in every drive.
Welcome back. It is the first round of the Honda Racing Simulator Championship here at Matsusaka. It's still me, Rene Butler, and Cameron Roger behind the microphone, bringing you all the action of the Pro Grid now, because we just had the 20-minute race in the amateur session. And if you missed that, you missed one of the best finishers in sim racing. That's what I'm saying right now. I've got 15 years of experience. I'm allowed to say that. Do that now. It was really good. And now we're on to the next one. So 15-minute qualification. Then we head into the pro race. And I'm absolutely sure we see some awesome action again, Cameron, right?
Yes, this is a fairly similar setup. However, these pro drivers, obviously being slightly quicker in the pre-qualification phase, have a slightly longer race. So they got a 40-minute race, and they could potentially make a pit stop. We'll have to see. In the test race last week, they didn't, but who knows what they'll do in this race, as they're now fighting for prizes and points here, as the drivers are just starting their quali laps in the background. But for the pro class, we have quite a big step in the prize pool. The winner will get 20 million rupees, second place will get 10 million, third will get 8, fourth will get 6.5, and fifth will get 5.5 million rupees. So plenty of cash on the line for these drivers, as well as obviously the coveted trophy that comes with that as well. So this is where we are. The test race last week, that has been done. This is where they need to perform now, as points are on the table.
We can't forget about the bragging rights. It's another thing that you can actually get with a win here. And we got Kenzie on the screen already. Once again, if you joining us now for race number 2, basically, of the event, then let's recap shortly what it's all about. So we have those Honda Civic, the 2018 FK8 Type R as a base for these race versions. Everyone sits in the same car. It's a 2-liter turbocharged engine. That's the K20 motor core still. And yeah, it's a spec series. That means everyone has the same amount of grip available. Everyone has the same power getting out of the corner. Same brakes. Just slightly differences in the actual setup. They can change the rear wing. They can obviously change the suspension a bit. So there can be certain differences in how they approach a corner. In the actual amateur qualifying, we had 0.1 of a second difference between first and, I think, 7th in the end. So I expect the pros to be exactly on the same level. And then we head into 40 minutes of pure action, lap in and lap out.
Yeah, last week in the test race, the top 6 were covered by less than 0.2 of a second as well. The top 3 were all within 0.5 of a second. So I'm thinking that we're going to get a really close qualifying session here as well. And as a reference, the pro pole position last week was a 2-minute 5.0. So I do wonder, with an extra week's practice and an extra week's setup development, I wonder if anyone will get into the 2-minute 4s.
Definitely a mark to break here in qualification. As long as we got time and people are just on the first lap out here, we see Ataya Kenzie actually having obviously a purple sector because there's no time on the board yet. We might make you familiar with one of the names to look out for in this race. One of that is Arvin Taruna. I'm just quickly checking which car number he has. That should be the car number 3, as he was the winner of the test race. So there was a test race before to check if everything is all right and people are capable of racing with these cars and getting used to it. So that's a name to check. And another one is Jakaya Svoyo, who sits in the number 2 car. No, it's the number 1 car, because he was the fastest in the pre-qualification, because as Cameron mentioned earlier, the fastest 30 of a hot lap qualifier made it into the pro grid here. So Sisvoyo, definitely someone to look out for, and I'll tell you that he's first right now with a 2 minutes 4 seconds 0.5, and it's not even the only one, because there's Andika Rama Maulana, one of the fastest sim race in Indonesia, already on 2nd position, so the fight is on.
And not only 2nd position, by 0.002 of a second. That is literally nothing. That is centimeters in terms of distance, which is just how close they are. And they've got a 7/10 gap to Taruna in 3rd place at the moment, just showing how quick those laps are. And that's already in the first lap, half a second quicker than the pole position last week. So these guys are really turning on the heat now.
Interesting to see if there's anyone else that is capable of getting into the 4-second range. Taruna, Kenzie, and Stanley. They're currently all around 2 minutes 5 and then low to mid. So let's see if they can get closer. We also got real-life racing drivers in this one as well. So it's another few names to look out for. One of that is Ardianza. He's a junior karting driver. So another familiar name here in this series, so better get used to that. Obviously, Hayu Amil Luhur here in his first lap out. No, he had one already. It's a 2 minutes 8.5, which currently obviously is the end of the grid, 21st. But that also means that there are another 9 drivers yet without a lap time.
And as you said with Ardenese, he's in 7th place at the moment, so he is getting himself up there, and you can't miss him because he's in a bright yellow machine. So it'll be easy to see number 6. But yeah, it's very interesting how these times have worked out at the moment, because after the first 2 drivers, there's already a second between 3rd and about 8th place as well. So a little bit more spread out, just showing how quick those first couple of laps will be. But we do have, for instance, Rakhmat on a lap, as well as Mohamed Andri. So yeah, a couple of other drivers coming through to finish their first laps as well, just to see where they are going to be after their first laps.
Andika Rama Maulana will actually start his 2nd hot lap. Let's see if he maybe can get the lead off Sisvoyo. Currently, as I said already, Maulana and Sisvoyo basically in a world of their own are the only drivers with a 2 minutes and 4 second lap time. But we also still got 7.5 minutes, a bit more than that, on the clock. So still everyone's game here to get inside the top 5, get inside the top 3, and there's still 6 drivers without a lap time that could get on the board here. So it'll be interesting to see who of them can have an impact early on. Reinaldi Ido just came around, but there wasn't a lap time that helped him improve. He's still 6th position. And see, Maulana's first sector should come in. He's obviously hunting down Sisvoyo, but that was very hot in there. Great catch though on the car, getting the rear back in line, getting some traction up the front tires. Obviously front wheel driven car, so you just slam the accelerator, try to get it to pull the car straight again. And with that, he even got a purple sector.
Having said that, Sisvoyo is just behind him on the track, and he went quicker by 12 thousandths of a second. So these two are doing almost the exact same pace, even on their 2nd lap as well.
Interesting to see now. It would be so heartbreaking for Maulana to come through, get pole, and then half a second later, he lost the pole to Sisvoyo already, because they're both behind each other on the track. But they're really squeezing the Honda Civics here on this qualification lap. Every single inch of performance they try to get out of these cars, and ensuring that they can be the first pole sitter of the Pro Grid in the Honda Racing Simulator Championship, because this is round 1. It's time to set the tone, basically, putting yourself on the roadmap here, making sure that everyone sees you as a contender for the championship. Maulana a bit over-motivated in that chicane, I would say, in terms of chicane. I'm not sure if that's still that. It is. That's 2 purple sectors. That's a 3rd purple sector. So for now, Andika Rama Maulana is in the lead, but Sisvoyo is just coming around the corner. Let's see if he gets back top position. No, he doesn't. So it will be Maulana now here with the last 6 minutes to go.
Wow, so he's got pole by almost 3/10 of a second, and then 8/10 of a second to Rakhmat in third place. That is a huge jump, and it's 1 second back to fifth place. So these guys at the front are really starting to stretch out, and Maulana is definitely on it here at Matsusaka, as we see Ardeneza, as we mentioned before, karting driver in real life, coming around the final corner. He's on a couple of personal bests, 10th position at the moment. Where can he put himself as he comes across the line? He goes up into 6th place on a 5.4.
Not a bad start into the championship at all, and we know that a lot can happen in the actual race. Like, you want to be up front, maybe not first, because obviously it means there's absolutely no slipstream going down in turn 1, but that shouldn't have such an impact here on these cars into turn 1. But you want to be at least close to the lead, to be able to make your move early on in the laps, while everyone's still on cold tires, still on cold brakes. If you can handle that, there are a lot of opportunities that will open up for you to move up the grid. That's also what Haryanto is waiting for, to move up the grid, currently in 16th with a 2.6.3. Let's see, got 2 green sectors. How he does now when he comes across the line. That's 9th, so getting himself nicely into the top 10 here.
Yeah, a few drivers making improvements, as I think a lot of drivers now are starting their out laps before coming on to another hot lap. But I think, René, it's safe to say that these drivers are really sort of spreading out a little bit more as that extra week of practice. It seems a couple of drivers have really made improvements.
I think it is about the available time for you to actually work on your setup and on your own line, but it can also be about race engineers, right? We know that many of the big teams in sim racing, they have their own race engineers helping their drivers to really get the best out of their cars and the setups, because not every driver can do that themselves. I'm one of those. Like, I'll drive whatever people give me, because I have absolutely no clue about setting up a car in sim racing, and I would say that's the same in real racing, and just get behind the wheel and get going on the track. So sometimes it is about who have they available in their team and what can they come up with as a team for a solution for the next race.
We got Rakhmat, Tarun and Stanley all doing decent first sectors and personal best for those 3 drivers on their next hot lap as well. So we got a few drivers coming around for their next lap, as we see Kenzie coming through turn number 1 and 2. Tricky little couple of corners there, because you've got to take so much speed into it before you work your way up the S's. And as you see on this track, it's a lot about the... Oh, as he takes too much... I must say it's a lot about the curbs, but he takes too much of that curb and almost rolls the car.
I'm not sure if he was listening to our AM broadcast and thought, oh, they said something about conserving tires. If less of them touch the ground, then it will be a lot better. But this is the qualification setup. Just run through the tires. They're for free in sim racing. No one cares. A bit different to real racing. So just use all of them. Use all the contact path available. So otherwise, you can't really be that quick.
As who was that who jumped up? Taruna has gone up into 4th, but I think Rakhmat, it was, also jump up into 3rd place as Stanley set a decent lap, but Maulana, he's gone even quicker in that first sector. The first person I've seen to get into the 46s in that first sector as well. He's already on a 2-minute 4.2. Can he get into the 2-minute 3s?
If he does that step, then we're basically talking about 3 different worlds here in this race. There will be Maulana, then the Sisvoyo world, and then the rest of the pack, basically, with everyone else. Obviously, big names from the R-Factor 2 world, such as Ferris Stanley, who's currently 5th. He's also participating in the official R-Factor 2 GT Pro Series. He was running the only AMG GT car there, so that was a very impressive performance and a bold choice in terms of cars. Is doing well here on this front-wheel driven Honda Civic, while Maulana seems to be once again on an even better lap. Who can actually stop that guy in qualification? Will it be the same in the race? And he's not making the jump to the 2 minutes and 3 second range, but it wasn't far off that.
That is such a good lap. A 2-minute 4.1. He's almost 4/10 of a second on provisional pole position at the moment. Then there's another almost 4/10 back to 3rd place. So he's got such a big lead. And I should say Sisvoyo as well. Both of them have got such a big lead. But as we mentioned, it's a 40-minute race. It's not just about the quali pace, but that is certainly giving us a good indication as to what they're going to do, as we're now on board with Ardeneza coming down the back straight, coming through the 2nd sector, but he's actually dropped a decent amount of time in that middle sector. play could potentially improve up from 7th place, although it goes really wide there in 130R.
I think that was a bit too wide. We'll lose a bit of momentum going over that curb. That was very harsh. You saw that car bouncing back on those slicks. That costs momentum. You will lose a bit of speed coming out there. So not too convinced that this will be enough. No, it won't. He will still stay on 7th. And we know now. So to actually make it in the top 4, you have to score 2 minutes 4 seconds because everyone there has 2 minutes 4 seconds. And then Ferry Stanley is the quickest driver that does not have that 2 minute 4 second range. It's actually on a 2.5.0, so he marks the big gap between the very fast lap times and the very good lap times, I would say. Qualification is over, but Sisvoyo is on a hot lap, so he has a chance there. That was also taking the maximum amount of cutting available, and then I think he was trying to balance that out again. He was too far on the inside on the previous one, too far on the outside on the next one.
That was just a little bit wise there from Yaka. So he obviously will have to abandon that lap. So Taruna must have got in just as the time went to 0, as well as Ferris Stanley, who was slightly ahead of him up the road as well. They must have got past just in time. So these laps are valid. As you can see, the counter at the bottom is counting up still. So they are on laps, and they're the only 2 guys really on a lap apart from Edo, because Edo is coming and he's just crossed the line in 9th place on a 5.6. So only 2 guys left out on track, which is Taruna and Stanley.
Stanley could drop below the 2.5 now, and Taruna has a good shot at Warmup because it's only that's 0.3 between him and 3rd position. So if he wants to start from a podium spot, then it's his chance right now because they're the only cars on the track. Pretty empty, but Taruna a bit crazy into that second left-hander there, throwing around the Civic a bit too much, I think. So that's why the street car has ESP and everything enabled. Things like that won't happen.
As Ferris Stanley is slightly ahead of Taruna, and he is done a personal best middle sector, so he might be able to actually improve and get into that 2 minute 4.
Yeah, I don't think Taruna will improve, but Stanley could. He actually does, but it's still not enough to get into the 2 minute 4 second range. Oh, heartbreaking. Taruna obviously pulls off. That wasn't able to save it anymore. So bringing the Honda back to the pits. And with that, qualification in the Pro segment came to an end, with Molana and Sisvoyo being the top 2 guys here to beat. Rahmat in 3rd, Taruna 4th, and Stanley in 5th.
Look at those gaps there, a lot bigger than we saw last week in the test race. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works and how it translates to the race pace. Obviously, a 40-minute race, you really need to look after the tyres if you don't want to make a pit stop. And that's something that we'll be looking out for in a couple of minutes after we get these messages from our sponsors.
The power of dreams.
I am the front man who drives. My power keeps me ahead in the front line. My reputation gets me on the front page. This is how I drive superiority. By being in the front row. New Honda Civic Turbo.
Locked and loaded back at Matsusaka, and after that advertisement, I really have to say, I have to work on my image. I'm not looking that good if I step out of my Type R, and I'm also not capable of any backflips. So if there's anyone out there able to help me into shape of a real Civic driver, then let me know to get that done. But let's talk about the actual Honda Racing Simulator Championship that we're here for at Matsusaka in Round 1, which is brought by Honda Prospect Motor and HM Engineering, bringing us all together for this big event.
Yeah, thank you to both of them for organising this race. This is a 6-round season, as we've previously mentioned. We start here in Matsusaka in Japan before going to Malaysia, Silverstone, Sao Paulo, Zandvoort, and finishing the season in Portugal at the end of August. There's obviously plenty of prizes on the line as well. 20 million rupees for the champion of the series as well. We've got 25 points for the win, going all the way down to 15th position where you get 1 point. So there's plenty of stuff to fight for. And I think over the next few weeks and a couple of months of this championship, we're going to get a really amazing broadcast for you. And as we say, the best drivers here in the pro category, and we've got 40 minutes of racing about to come up.
I have to say, looking at the schedule, I'm kind of sad that we do not visit the Nürburgring or the Nordschleife. So I really think that the Honda Civic looks great on that track, but who knows, maybe for a second season. But these tracks will be a tough challenge for all of these drivers, and I hope they're ready as they have the last warm-up minutes and seconds to get into the groove here for the 40-minute pro race. And you said already, the tyres will play a way bigger role than on the amateur race, which was only half as long as the pro race. And it will also be down to who's actually capable of managing tires and performance across those 40 minutes.
Yeah, we saw a tyre drop-off in the test race of about 3 seconds, and that was even after about 6 laps or so. So they definitely drop off quite a bit in terms of lap pace, and the pit stop time was actually reduced quite a bit. The mechanics did a lot of fitness training over the last week to get a lot quicker, and that is trying to make it more viable to potentially make a pit stop. However, obviously you then lose a decent amount of time, maybe 20-30 seconds, which you have to make up. But if you lose 3 seconds a lap over the course of 10 or 15 laps, you're easily going to make that back up. So that is what the drivers will have to balance out with what they do. A 40-minute race it's a bit more than a sprint race, really. It is starting to get to that point where you have to think about the endurance of your tyres and also not run out of fuel. We saw a couple of people in the pro race last week run out of fuel.
You do not want that to happen, that's for sure. That's, I think, as a driver, one of the most devastating moments you can have. You're on pace, coming around the corner, all of a sudden there's absolutely no performance anymore. Trying to squeeze the pedal even more, but there's nothing coming. So let's hope that everyone can avoid that. And as you said, not running out of fuel, not running out of tires, but also not really running out of concentration, because being on top of your game 40 minutes long is not an easy task.
Certainly isn't. You have to make sure you nail every apex, and as we saw, if you in the amateur race earlier, if you don't nail an apex, you can lose the race win on the final corner.
Yeah, that was really harsh. Loho, who made the pass on the very last corner of the race here to win the amateur series race. As I said already, it was probably one of the best moves that I've seen so far. It was absolutely a highlight moment of this series. So let's hope that the pro drivers will get us those highlights as well, as they have the last 10 seconds before they get onto the grid. They will obviously do a warm-up lap, just like the amateurs did. So that's their chance to warm up the tires and brakes a bit, get them onto working temperature and into the window of where they perform at their very best. And then we launch again from a standing start. So it's not like the typical endurance, a rolling start and all that stuff. No, everyone has to come to a halt again. And then when the 5 red lights go off, we start into our last race of the day.
And this is the first race of the season, so everything is reset. It's all at 0. So the amount of points that you get today is what's really going to set you off. So especially for these drivers near the front, as we see the grid here, Maulana, Savoyo, Rakamat, these guys are the ones who don't really need to take that much risk because they're already in a decent position. However, the ones a little bit further back, maybe Ty Kenzie, someone like that around 7th position, might be the one to take a little bit more risk to try and get a bit higher up the standings.
And it's obviously the same for this part of the grid, because you get points until position 15, that's Michael Christian, and then Nicolas Steven Arik, Asgar, and Pratama behind them. They obviously want to get a bit of the cake, basically, here. A bit of the points that are available in Route 1. So that's another part of the grid to watch out for, especially in the first minutes of the race start. All right, everyone is on the way for warm-up. See all the beautiful Honda Civics passing our camera right now while we see the last remaining positions on the grid at 2:23.7. I'm pretty sure that Indira actually had a lap where he threw the car away. That's definitely not race pace, I'm sure about that. But we see Maulana, one of the biggest name in Indonesian sim racing, really strong growing community and growing market in terms of sim racing, leading the pack here in the pro race. Probably not really surprising, although Sismoyo, the guy right behind him, the car that you now see right next to that rear wheel, he was the quickest in the pre-qualification. So these two are basically battling for being the biggest name coming into the Honda Racing Simulator Championship.
Yeah, they are the cars number 1 and 2 for a reason, as you mentioned in the pre-qualifier. Interestingly, the top 5 is also cars number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, obviously in a slightly messed up order, but they are the top 5 from the pre-qualification. It's interesting that that is also carried into the race as well. But as you say, a couple of those names there are sort of the biggest drivers in all of Indonesian sim racing, which is great to that Patriot Engineering and Honda Prospect Motor are giving this outlet for a lot of these drivers to experience maybe for the first time a high level national competition with some of the best drivers, and that is is about to start as we come towards the final sector of this formation lap.
I really love this championship now that we have on our hands, because obviously I'm a huge Honda fanboy. I own 3 right now, and across the years I owned a few other Type R models, some of the Japanese models that are not available for us in Europe. Someone is pulling off there around the wall.
His engine.
Oh no, that was just say that's not the fall of the Honda engine. Never blow. My S2000 is running for ages already. Well, that was very unfortunate. Ragwan was starting in 3rd, and now he had to retire. He spawned new in the pits, but he will start from all the way back, right? He won't be able to now make it back on the grid.
No, he will definitely.
Wow.
Yeah, he was shifting, and he went accidentally into 1st gear, which obviously over-revved the engine, so it was a driver error. He will be able to start from the pit lane, as you mentioned, but he will be all the way at the back, and that is going to be a huge task to get up to the significant points, but we will have to watch out what he can do there, as we also have Haryanto back in the pit lane as well in 12th place, so a couple of drivers making some small mistakes here. Yeah,
this will also change us going into turn 1, because Stanley now has no car in front of him. Taruna has no car on his left, while Sismoyo and Maulana are basically without anyone threatening them going into this race. But we got the first red lines. The pro races lined up for the Honda Racing Simulator Championship. Round 1 is underway. We go green into the race. It seems like Maulana had a great start. Stanley closing the gap to Taruna already. There might be a chance going into turn 1 for him to overtake. On the back, Farhan and Kenzie coming a lot closer, creeping onto them, but leading the race into turn 1 was Maulana. There's someone going off wide, catching the car again, getting back onto the grid. Nothing happened there, just him losing 2 or 3 positions. But it seems like everyone went cleanly through turn 1, and with that I just jinxed it. I think that is Ardianza that went off there. It is Ardianza in the yellow Civic that spun around there after the contact coming back. There was a car coming back from the green onto tarmac again. Very unfortunate. The front 3, 4, 5, they didn't change. Kenzie is in 5th. Obviously, we lost Rahmat, who started in the pits, which was that big gap you saw on the grid. Andre here, that's 8th position, that's 7, 8, 9, with everyone being bunched up. But it seems besides that one incident we had, I see Haryanto, he DNF'd already, and I see Farhan parking his car in the gravel. But other than that, it seems everyone went through.
He made it 3 wide into turn 3 with Ardeneza and someone else. I didn't quite catch who it was, but obviously 3 wide into a fast corner. that you really take as a king isn't going to work, and unfortunately he lost out quite a bit. He's still sat there, so hopefully he removes his car before the leaders come around, but it is Maulana who's leading the way by a decent margin actually as we come towards the end of lap 1, and Taruna, your race winner in the test race, is actually not too far behind, nor is Ferris Stanley, so I think we're going to get a good fight here for these top positions.
Yeah, Maulana obviously had no one pressuring him early on, and we know that between Stanley, Taruna and Siswoyo was the gap of the missing Ahmed car, so that kept them a bit easier into turn 1. We see lights going on and off here. That should be the blue car is Ferry Stanley, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it is. And then behind him is Ataya Kenzie going down to turn 1. So Taruna seems to be in control of that group already. But Siswoyo, I was expecting him to start hunting down Maulana directly in lap 1. But he might get a lot of pressure and a lot of work now coming from the rear with Taruna and Stanley.
Yeah, this is going to be a great fight, I think, between these guys. We're already seeing a very close battle for third position, and it's quite nice that they've all got different coloured cars as well, so should be able to identify them pretty easily. We got Taruna in third place, followed by Stanley Kenzie as well. But Siswoyo is actually dropping off the back of Maulana a little bit as these guys in third place are starting to catch up.
Oh, that was a bit wide for Kenzie. The problem is there that the gravel has really taken away engine momentum. Siswoyo, he was trying to defend the inside line. We saw that on the previous race. If you're on the defensive line and you move back onto it, that might not be the smartest move to make because you will lose a lot of brake power and then you might overshot the apex. So Siswoyo needs to be secure here to not lose that position to Taruna and Stanley, because if Taruna finds a way to get his front end in there and basically open the gap, there's a high chance that Stanley will launch for the same.
Certainly is, and that's especially for someone in, for instance, Taruna's position. He's got to attack and defend at the same time, which is probably one of the hardest jobs, because if you start putting yourself offline or braking in awkward positions, and that just means the person behind is going to be gaining on you and potentially is going to be making an overtake. But they're now coming towards the end of lap number 2, and Maulana's actually pulled away a little bit. It's going to be about 1.5 seconds in the lead as we finish the second lap.
Yeah, Maulana has all that space available. He doesn't have to worry about anyone on the back, and we had that on the previous race. Loho was always contested there for the lead, so it was hard for him to break away from the rest of the group. But for Maulana now, that's a way easier task with everyone being busy among themselves, basically. Taruna seems to really close the gap to Siswoyo there. Siswoyo in the red Honda Civic in second position. But what we see, the biggest difference for me here between the amateur grid and the pro grid is that these guys are waiting way longer to actually make a move. They're not over-motivated in terms of that. They wait until they see a clear chance to get the front end in there and then make a move, because they know that if they make a mistake, they're like 2, 3, 4 cars waiting on the rear to take an advantage of that.
They got to make the move at the perfect time. You don't want to, ruin your momentum, because the momentum always, Siswoyo goes quite wide there. The momentum is really an important thing, and when you get the opportunity, you either need to make it happen or you need to back out. You don't want to hinder yourself and make it worse. See Taruna there, he got a bit too tight on Siswoyo, and that now means Stanley's going to be all over the back of him, and that is exactly what I mean. If you judge that slightly wrong, you're actually going to have to then defend from the person behind rather than attack, because he just hindered himself a little bit and he lost time there in the hairpin. But can Stanley get alongside towards the braking zone? No, he's going to just sit tight for now.
Yeah, he was lifting a bit going into that turn. You saw that it's a bit earlier with coasting into the braking point there. He did want to catch all that dirty air behind Taruna and to not make any mistake, because behind Stanley there's Kenzie and Ido, 5th and 6th, both in lurking position basically, trying to get into the top 5, with Kenzie obviously being in the top 5 already. And even the second fighting group isn't far off, so these guys still have to maintain their current pace if they want to be safe inside the top 5, because if everyone else closing up, then things will get even harder. It seems like Siswoyo is struggling breaking away from Taruna. For Maulana, a lot easier, but Siswoyo, I'm not seeing him, staying second position for the next 3 or 4 laps, because Taruna is really pushing it.
And they just dropped off another half a second a lap to Maulana as well, who's now leading by almost 2 seconds. So they're really starting to drop off a little bit from Maulana. But interestingly, fastest lap of the race is Rahmat down in 15th position at the moment. So he's still got pace down there. But the pace drop-off has already come in a little bit. These second laps are a decent bit slower than the third lap was a decent bit slower than the second lap. So the tyres are already starting to drop off a little bit. Obviously, that is pretty much the same for all drivers, but it's certainly something that they need to keep an eye on and to try and not ruin those tyres before their time.
It will be hard for the group around Sasvoyo and Taruna now to decide, like, do you want to use all the available grip to now make a move to actually, like, for Taruna to get around Sasvoyo and get into second position? Or do you try to hold on longer to those tyres because there's still 32 minutes on the clock, so you don't want to run out of grip before the guys around you do, right? Well, we see 13 and 14 side by side going into the hairpin. That will go wrong. Someone spun. Big crash there. Oh, luckily he only tapped the rear of the car in front of him slightly. That was who was there? They were side by side going into that.
It was Ratia Indera, number 26, who's batting with the number 22 car. He tried to go around the outside of the kink into the hairpin, and then obviously just got on the grass. Fortunately, didn't make too big a contact with anyone, but there's certainly going to be some damage on a couple of those cars.
Also fight around 11th position. It seems like Faryanto will come a bit closer here. He's now edging onto Rahmat right in front of him. Rahmat obviously should have started third, but started from all the way back as he blew his engine in warm-up lap. Luckily, we're in sim racing, and he was just able to get into the pits, get a new engine. Rahmat now side by side into the chicane. That will work. Beautifully done. Small nudge, though, onto the number 13 there, but I think that was still all right. They just weren't really sure who gets that corner first, but Rahmat definitely the stronger participant going into that turn.
He's doing well, isn't he? From, I mean, not even the back of the grid, from the pit lane, so he'll be a couple of seconds behind once he gets the green light as well. So he's done well to get himself up into 12th place, and I would say he can get himself into the top 10 over the course of the race, which is still, a handful of points, which all count towards the championship.
Yeah, definitely with the current pace and with the pace that he showed in qualification, he should be able to get inside the top 10, but he's obviously also using his car a bit more than the guys in front. I mean, they're running good lap times right now, but if we look at Sasvoyo, Taruna, Stanley, it seems like they're all kind of frozen as where they are right now. No one tries to do anything too crazy. No one wants to end up in a highlight reel early on with a crash. So they start conserving their tires in the car, while Rahmat probably a bit more aggressive to actually make up that time.
Yes, certainly you have to be a bit more aggressive down there, but he's making it work for now, as he's now getting on the back of Fikri Azka as well, coming around the hairpin. So he's trying to make his way now up into 11th place, and this would be quite good for him, because after that he will have clean air ahead of him, and he might actually be able to go quicker than the leaders. He's got the slipstream down the inside. Can he make it on the brakes? They're going to be side by side, tiny bit of contact. And he has made that move stick, although Azka's trying to come back around the outside, but with a little bit of contact, Rahmat gets through there.
Yeah, that was launched hard into that left-hander, but the gap was there, and Rahmat went for it. He knows that he has to take every opportunity right now if he wants to get back onto a strong point positions, basically, so inside the top 10 again. Taruna slightly closing the gap to Sasvoyo again in the chicane, but will definitely not be close enough for turn 1 to make any move. Ferry Stanley, he had to leave them a bit. Yeah, it really seems to me that no one wants to push all the way, but Taruna way closer into turn 1 than I expected. Is he running less wing here? Because he was a lot quicker on that straight.
He might certainly be, although it is one of those things, to get the slipstream, you do have to be fairly close in a car like this to get it. But he definitely did get it. And as you say, he closed in quite a lot just at the end of the straight, and he pulled out the slipstream a little bit. So I think on another lap, if he stays in the slipstream the whole way, he might be able to make a move into turn number 1. But it seems that potentially the best place to try and make an overtake is on the back straight. But all this battling has actually let Maulana get, well, quite a big lead, to be honest. It's fluctuating a little bit, but it's around 3 seconds.
Yeah, that is a big gap already, but Maulana also running, like, just to put that in perspective, the leader is currently running 2 minutes and 8 seconds, while qualification time was 2 minutes 4 seconds flat. So we nearly crossed the barrier to 2 minutes and 3 seconds. So the pace in race is completely different to what these guys can run in qualification.
Yeah, it's starting to slow up a little bit more. The pace drop-off is already about a second or so, and it sort of makes sense that we are now 12 minutes into the race, so by the end of the race we are going to be towards maybe even 3 seconds a lap slow, which is why a pit stop might work. However, if you do make a pit stop, you need to make it at the right time, and we didn't see anyone do it in the test race, so we'll see how that works out. But Taruna once again closes in on that second half of the straight, but you really need to make sure you get a good exit. Always, he's not done that. He's gone too wide at 130R, as someone else in the background has as well. I think that was Edo in the background. But can he keep close enough through this final chicane? Not quite on that second apex, so potentially not on this lap. But Stanley's also very close to him, so he needs to be careful.
We see 16th and 17th in a very interesting fight, because Amiluho just managed to get up to 16th.
Look behind them. Michael Christian has been spun a little bit by Ahmad in the braking zone. You're just mentioning 16th, 17th, but just behind them there was that little bit of contact. Having said that, 16th for now. Amana Ula is coming down past Hidyat into turn number 1. Can he make it on the brakes? Not quite close enough on the brakes.
And there's a lot of action going on everywhere now, because people seeing the gaps and the chances to make a move, but it doesn't always mean it's actually working. So Mike Christian now on 18th. He was closer. He was actually 15th when he started into the race, but now he's trying to fight off Ryan and Ahmad right behind him, and it seems like that will not work well, because they seem to be a bit closer, at least in this first sector, to make a move. And I wonder who was... It's Ghassan Amanullah, who has Amiluhu right behind him and Hidayat right in front of him. That was a pack of 3, basically, that fought before. There seems to be a huge difference, though, on straight line speed, so we'll be interesting to see how they will sort them out now going on to the back stretch. While we have a quick look once again at Sasvoyo and Taruna. Taruna once again a bit wide there, giving Ferris Stanley a quick look up the inside, but definitely not enough to actually make a move.
Just an update on Rakma in 11th place. He was 1.8 seconds a lap quicker than the car ahead of him, and he's actually quicker than everyone apart from Maulana. So he is really going to be catching up to these guys, as we now see these top few drivers come through the final sector once again. This is completing lap number 7 of the race with 25 minutes to go. And can he stay super close in that final chicane? Not quite.
No, the access
just behind.
Not as good as Sasvoyo, but let's quickly have a look now at 15, 16, 17, because they're going side by side nearly every single turn. Seems like they are quite close in terms of performance. That's another gap opening here for Amiluhur, who is on 17th, the nudge on Hidayat, who is the car right in front, and now Christian, that's the purple car, now coming also back into this group, turning this into a 5-man battle. So it seems like they started their own small championship down there, really trying their best to make a move and make it up the inside into that chicane, but they're not near the 15th position. That's the problem. No, 15th position is actually Hidayat. That's the car in front, so that's the last driver that would score a point if it ends right at this minute. So all of these drivers in the back, the 4 Hondas lining up behind Hidayat, they all having their eyes locked on the last remaining points here on the grid.
And the all-important points, because if you finish 16th, it doesn't really matter if you finish 16th or 17th. However, if you get 15th, as you say, you get a point, and he's going to have to hold on for quite a while. There's still over half of the race to go, so I think this is going to be a great scrap to look at towards the mid part of the field.
Yeah, they're doing a great job there, but Hidayat went a bit wide, so losing momentum. You can see that immediately, everyone closing the gap. And then Amanullah had to lift off a bit to not hit Hidayat. Managed to make that well. Oh, that was the opening gap here. Look at that. Amanullah can actually make the inside move, but also Imuluhu gets involved in that. They nearly go 3 wide through the right kink. And who comes out on 15th position after this? It seems like Hidayat can hold on to it, while one of the guys, Amunala, really went wide, losing a lot of positions. Oh, very late braking by Imuluhu, but he's not able to get the front end lined up to the door of Hidayat. Hidayat is to live another time in 15th position. He's losing my words here, but that was quite a sight here.
And I think we've got Taruna now trying to make a move on Siswo for second place as well, coming down to turn number 1. They went almost side by side down in the final chicane, and Siswo actually had to block that one off there. Taruna got so close, so these guys are really starting to close up now as Taruna sent one down into the final chicane. And Kenzie and Edo have actually dropped off a little bit, so this has now turned into a 3-way scrap. But Taruna is starting to get very close as he was side by side with Siswo in that final chicane.
Yeah, they need to be aware of Ferris Stanley still lurking there in the dark right behind them. He's edging ever so close here. And he will make the move at one point. Like, if they really get into a fight and Taruna tries to force the car up the inside of Siswoyo, I'm absolutely sure that Stanley will launch for that as well. Back to the battle for the last point on the grid. It seems like it's not cooled down here. But Christian now, all of a sudden, he was the last of this pack, and now he's the actual one sitting on the points.
You can't look away from these guys for more than a couple of corners, and they're changing their position. As it's now Hidayat in 16th and Faiz Ryan in 17th, getting so close, coming up towards the two Degners. This is not really a place to make an overtake, but it is certainly where you can slightly put off your opponents. That was quite a big cut there by Hidayat. Doesn't want to do that too often, otherwise the stewards might look at him for taking liberties. However, can he defend into the hairpin? Is going to be a bit of a look there from Ryan, but not quite close enough. However, he's going to get a good exit here.
Yeah, I mean, this looks great and going side by side, but they're losing time onto Michael Christian, who is on the 15th position right now. You can see that he's able to spread the gap there because these guys are going side by side nearly every single turn, and that costs so much precious time. Once again, they're changing positions. I mean, they're having a lot of fun. I'm pretty sure we don't need to argue about that, but it does not really help them getting back onto 15th position right now.
As once again, Taruna's getting the situation to turn number 1, but I don't know if he's going to be just alongside into the braking zone yet. Not quite enough. But it's certainly getting a lot closer between these two battles on the track, even though they're for completely different ends of the points. Is there some contact there coming down towards the braking zone? He's going to be spun around. Can he save it? Who is that going around? That is Anamula. He's actually hit the wall there. So he's going to be dropping down as the battle continues on the track as someone comes into the pit lane. That's Hidayat coming into the pit lane.
Yeah, I think he was moving under braking a bit too much, and then he clipped the front side, rotated around it, and then the car was gone. So that fight is breaking up, but there's still this fight going on for second position. Siswoyo on the red car, Taruna is in teal, and then Stanley in the darker blue on the rear. Obviously, they didn't change positions like the guys around 15, 16, 17, 18th, but they had been following each other so closely for the first half of the race. We're halfway through now, on the way on the finish, and look at that next fight, which is top 5, Kenzie and Edo right behind that. Kenzie in purple and Edo in black and red. So it seems now everyone's settled into their position and is now ready to actually move up the grid.
They certainly are. And this is the point where some people's tyres might be better or worse. Malana at the front, he's dropped off a pace about 1.3 seconds, but some people behind have dropped off over 2 seconds from their first opening laps when the tyres are fresh. So this is getting to that point of the race where the tyre discrepancy is going to come into play. And now Taruna, can he get alongside into the fast left-hander? No, he's going to have to do it potentially in the chicane as they both run a little bit wide. Can he do it on the brakes? Yeah, definitely braking later than Suzwayo, so if he can get close there, or as he nudges the back of him actually, if he can get close, I think he potentially has the ability to outbrake, as he is now very close. He's going to be in the slipstream, but is he going to be close enough to make a move? Suzwayo's defending a little bit, so he definitely thinks he's going to be close enough as we come down the start-finish straight. I think it might just run out of road, so it really looks like that final chicane is where he needs to make the move if he cannot set it up at a different place on the lap.
Yes, Suzwayo with a great defense there, making sure that he has the momentum coming onto the straight to not allow them for a turn one move. But if these guys get any closer, then it's basically the exhaust system of Suzwayo being attached and fixed to the intake of Taruna, because these guys have been so close throughout the previous corners. Even Stanley, look at that, that is 4th position Ferris Stanley that we're looking from the hood right now, and he got both of them set up right in front, and they're not letting each other run away a slight bit, not at all. They're not giving away any inch. Well, Molana is now up to 4.5 seconds of the gap already, because there's absolutely no one around him and destroying his rhythm. He is just going and going and going lap for lap.
And a battle that is heating up a little bit further behind is Rakhmat in 10th position. He's now caught up to the cars ahead. There are 3 cars directly ahead of him, which would put him up into 7th place, with Iskander in 7th place there. Now Rakhmat looking up the inside. Oh, he's actually hit the back of that car. That is Angwin in 10th place now. So Rakhmat's got that position. A little bit of contact was made there. So that's another position for him. And now he's got 2 more places before he gets up into 7th place. But I don't know if that might get looked at a bit later on, because he did hit the back of Angwin there. I'm
pretty sure that will be looked at, because he was braking a bit later, and for that he had to get out of the slipstream, because otherwise he would run in the rear of the driver in front of him, and while doing that he hit the outside corner of the rear fender and the rear bumper, and that led to this slight incident. Taruna very late on the braking. He's now finally going side by side with Suzwayo. His first attack, and maybe the only one he needs to get up to 2nd position. Taruna is through. He's our new 2nd position. That's what I told you about. Basically waiting, finding a weakness, and then only need 1 attack to go through. Beautifully done by Taruna here.
That was an awesome move, and Suzwayo, fair play to him, gave him the absolute amount of room for the width of a Honda Civic, and that is a perfect move there by Taruna. That is what you have to do. Sometimes you just have to just make the move stick, just go for it, and that is exactly what he did, getting the move there. And now I think Stanley is going to be looking at Suzwayo, as well as Rakhmat has got himself up into 8th place, just behind as well. So plenty of moves happening here as we're just over halfway through the race.
The big question for Suzwayo will be now, how shaken is he after that maneuver? Like, is he still in the zone? Because now he got Stanley right behind him, so he's still looking at the position that he would like to have, but he doesn't have in it anymore. And now we got Stanley, who saw it is possible to overtake Suzwayo, so I really hope that he's still in his rhythm and able to get back onto Taruna. Otherwise, Stanley will just go for it right to the next corner.
Yeah, he needs to be careful to not now over push to try and get it back, although Taruna there making a bit of a mistake, is letting Suzwayo get a little bit closer once again. So this battle is certainly not over, as we have about 15 minutes to go in this race, and the drivers will obviously then be having less and less laps to try and make an overtake. And you saw how long it took for Taruna to set that one up, but the battles behind as well are all going on, so there's plenty of little mini battles up and down the grid.
Yeah, precise driving is necessary among this group, 2nd, 3rd and 4th, because these guys are not fooling around. That was 1 attack and it went through. Beautifully executed here by Taruna, who was waiting for that, over 20 minutes to set that up. He's running a bit wide with that, might give a chance to Suzwayo. Nope, he's just closing the gap, but not yet in a position. Maybe after this one, because now he's really close. If he's getting enough slipstream coming on to start finish straight, and with Ferris Stanley not being in a position to make a move, there might be a small chance for Suzwayo to get back into 2nd position. But Taruna had a good accident, it seems, because he's not losing a lot of pace coming on here.
Yeah, it certainly seems like that dive on the brakes into the final chicane is one of the best places to make an overtake. It's a little bit difficult in some other parts of the track, but this battle is not over. Look at that. That's the red Civic, their number 1 car, is all over the back of him. And if Taruna makes one mistake, there'll be potentially 2 positions that he can lose here, because Stanley is right behind them as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like, one mistake can cost you everything there. And that's what Suswoyo tries to avoid here. He will not be happy of losing second position to Taruna, but he also sees that you can't just throw something at Taruna again and just hope for him to bail out, because these guys are already on top of their pace right now. They're doing good. Stanley with a bit of lack, I think. That's why we looked so far outside for us. Rahmat still in 8th, by the way. He's chasing down Iskander now for 7th. So with nearly 13 minutes on the clock, there might be a chance for Rahmat to actually look at the top 6 even, which would be a massive comeback. We're starting from the pits. We see him here. We're on board with Rahmat right now. Iskander right in front of him. He is close enough to at least show guy in front that, hey, I'm here, look at your rear view mirror, my car is basically way bigger than that. So as soon as there will be a gap opening in front of him, Rahmat is going for it, under braking, really closing that gap once again. Not enough though, has a better exit. Look at that, using the double right to get on the inside, but that was a bit too optimistic there, especially since Iskander also wanted to close the gap again, but both cars staying on track. So nothing bad happened and the fight is still on.
And this is just losing him a bit of time to Edo, who is the car ahead. And I do wonder if that rattled him a little bit, because he just turned it too early there for 130R. So he's certainly pushing quite a lot, but he is going to have about 5 seconds to catch up, assuming he can get past Iskander here. But yeah, Iskander didn't leave him much room on the inside of that spoon corner onto the back straight. So Rahmat is going to have to find another way past. But yeah, the battle is still not over between a number of these drivers, as Edo is right behind Kenzie as well. So yeah, plenty of opportunities for these drivers to still make overtakes, as well as obviously this second, third and fourth battle as well.
It's crazy seeing these 3 still being in one battle group. They had been the entire race so far. There wasn't a single lap where any of them could breathe a bit more freely and just concentrate on their actual lap. No, they always had to keep in mind the guy braking in the front and another car on the rear that really wants to pass. So it's a lot of pressure on these drivers. It seems like Taruna is catching on to that first. Pressure was too much for a bit on the outside. Swoyer is back. Stanley's going through as well. So there was one mistake, but Taruna losing 2 positions immediately, just like we talked about before. And now he has to do all his work once again, getting closer, reading your opponent, making a move.
So we're seeing Rahmat, can he make a move into the chicane? No, Iskander's going to defend. He's going to go around the outside, but that could give him a decent exit as you come up to Spoon Corner. But yeah, just to finish the point on Taruna, as we said, if you make a mistake, 2 guys are going to be coming through, and that is exactly what happened, and that is not what you want to do when you are fighting for prize money. But now can Rahmat make a dive down the inside of the first apex here of the double right-hander? Yes, he can, and that is 7th place. But he does have, or he's actually gone up to about 6 seconds now to Edo ahead of him. So there's quite a bit of time, but he does have 10 minutes, which is about 5 laps for him to do that.
Well, Rahmat really beautifully putting his car onto the ideal line after crossing the apex there, not allowing anyone to cross over. So that was really good. We're taking maneuver. Angwin and Andy fighting here for 9th and 10th. That is Andre in the blue car, and then Angwin, who we are on board with right now, going into that chicane. In front of them you see Rahmat and Edo fighting. So there is a chance now for Angwin. He saw the gap there coming down. It seems like Andre not really a good exit out of that chicane, and we know how crucial that corner can be. I asked the guys from the amateur series just right before that, because they lost the lead in the entire race on that chicane, and Angwin will now move up to 9th position. If he can hold on to it in turn 1, and it seems like he can do this another couple, basically, right side by side here, 12th and 13th, but no maneuver possible there. Someone bailing out under braking, not being willing to really risk it all as we approach the last minutes of Route 1 here, with just 9 minutes to go.
And that battle for second has spread out just a little bit. Siswoyo is pulled away from Stanley, and Taruna hasn't quite caught up yet. So I do wonder if Siswoyo now has enough to hold on for this second place. He's been gifted it back by that mistake from Taruna. So I do wonder if he can hold on, because Stanley isn't quite getting there just yet, as we've seen someone go for a little spin. Who was that? That was Edo. Edo's gone wide, so that has given Kenzie a nice breathing space for 5th place, and Rakma up to 6th from starting in the pits.
Yeah, it's really an absolutely blasted performance that he puts on here, really making sure that everyone out there knows his name, that he's capable of being a front runner, even though he's not in the top 5 right now. With a slight mistake, they're blowing the engine. Next warm-up lap, he will definitely be more on the cautious side, I'm sure about that. The last 8 minutes for Andika Rama Maulana, who's still in the lead. You have nearly 5 seconds of a gap, and he was running, he started with 2 minutes and 8 seconds, and then he switched to 2 minutes and 9 seconds in lap 7, and since then he's always running identical lap times. So when it's about consistency, that Maulana should be on the package as advertisement.
One thing I'm finding quite interesting is how the lap times haven't always, we see quite a bit of a move there into the Alpha came, but the lap times haven't dropped off quite as much as the first race. I said there was about a 3-second drop off by the end of the race. We're only looking about sort of 1.5 to 2 seconds at the moment, so I think the drivers are learning how to save the tyres a little bit here, but they're still fighting quite hard as we're looking at this battle in the midfield for 10th place here. So this is Nicholas. It's always going to be a bit of a bump there, Stephen, on the back of Andre in turn number 2. Yeah, these drivers are seemingly doing a bit of a better job, but obviously time and more kilometers in the car is always what you need to get better.
Yeah, I wonder if the difference between the AM and the Pro segment in this race could be that the Pros are running different setups for the race, which would explain why the drop-off isn't as hard. Of course, they're not running through the tyres, maybe, as the amateur drivers, but they also have not been able to copy any of the qualification laps, even early on. So either everyone was running in conservative mode right from the get-go, or the setup is quite different, just making sure that the car is more stable and they can run those 40 minutes without thinking about the tyres each and every turn.
Yeah, certainly the setup can be quite a good help to help your tyre wear, for instance, as is obviously something that we've mentioned quite a bit. It doesn't look like anyone's going to use the option of making a pit stop. However, this track does have quite a few straights on it, so maybe when we get to some of the more technical tracks, who knows, you might see a pit stop. At least the option is there for the drivers if they need it. But as always, if you can make the tyres last and you don't have to make a pit stop, that is obviously going to be better, and someone who's doing that very good at the moment is Maulana, but his lead has come down just a little bit over the last couple of laps. He was half a second slower on the previous lap. What is it going to be this time? He was another 0.2 slower on this lap as well, so Siswoyo is slowly catching Maulana at the front.
I'm not sure though, with 5.5 minutes and Maulana being in control of this race the entire time, if Siswoyo has any chance at all to get closer, unless Maulana is really dropping in pace massively now. But Siswoyo was also involved in way more fights, so can't really see him being more nicely to his tyres, I would say, and having more grip available. That would kind of surprise me, to be honest. We see now that's the battle for 9th. Oh, very close once again. It seems like Andre will lose that position here. A bit of bumping by Ido, and he's pushing his car through. Yep, Ido back up to 9th, and it's Steven down to 10th. It's not Andre. I thought Andre was driving the blue car. That was my mistake. Oh, he is. He is. That's Nicholas Steven in 10th, Andre in 11th. So that's the car we got on screen right now, 11th, Andre, and Indira right behind him.
And this is obviously for the final few points, and Michael Christian was in 15th, but he's now dropped behind Fires Ryan. So Fires Ryan is getting the final point in 15th there. But that is going to be obviously crucial for his championship. And when you're sort of near the mid part of the field, those few points are very... Oh, Andrew's gone off in second. Degner. What happened there?
That was white like that. That looked like him not braking at all. We just saw something blue passing the camera and then going into the ditch there, basically. So that had cost a lot of time. We see, it should be Ido running with the LED lights of the Honda Civic on, yep.
Yes.
And then it's Nicholas Steven in second position with a slightly purple on the side compared to the green of Ido. If they would just do their battles, one turn on the lights, one leave them off, will make a lot of things easier. Who's that in the back though? 11th, that's Ndera, but he's not yet in any attack range, but he could be because there's still 3.5 minutes.
You had a quick look around to Andre. He did what a few drivers have done. He just cut completely the inside of the first Degner, which meant that he obviously had no grip, went wide, and once you're in the gravel on the outside, you can't do anything. But this battle is heating up now, coming into... Oh, there's going to be contact there on the second apex between those couple of drivers of Steven and Edo. And now Steven's going to be potentially under attack from Ndera as well, just behind in 11th.
It's not over here yet. Another nearly 3 minutes, and it seems like people are not yet happy with their positions. They still want to make up some points here. Steven really trying to defend the inside line, with Ndera now being way closer than he was before. So turning this into a three-way battle and the chance for him to make a move. Taruna, by the way, still in fourth. There's nearly a second of a gap between him and Ferris Stanley. And he just did another mistake, nearly spun the car. I saw that on the other camera. So Arvin Taruna not in best shape right now. I don't see him getting another shot at Ferris Stanley, but it seems like Steven gets another shot here on Ido. Ido a bit far out, and that costs a lot of power there. Going through the grass, you're losing grip, and also Ndera will go through. Seems like Ido will drop down to 11th. That was one thing. Like, it seems to be the story of the race. Do one mistake, lose 2 positions.
That's just how tight it is in the Honda Racing Simulator Championship, which is... Yeah, it's just what happens when you come racing, and in spec cars, it's always so close, and you always get those couple of drivers who end up pairing up because they're always roughly the same speed, and that is what we've seen a number of times here. Although this is not over. Look, Ndera now coming up against Nicholas Steven. Can he get up the inside? As we've seen a couple of drivers, no, he can't quite, but he will have one more lap after this one, as Maulana comes across the line to start the final lap of this 40-minute pro race, the first race of the season.
And it seems like Maulana will take that in great fashion. With that gap that he still has, it's up again nearly to 5 seconds. Andre still has to defend his position, so do some of the other drivers. Not over yet, even if it's last minute, but it is the last lap for Maulana. Forces Foyo, Stanley and Taruna. Kenzie, that was a big hit here in the chicane. That was Ndera going off, right? He's just off to the side there in the chicane. Yeah, he's dropping back onto the grid, but once again losing a lot of time, a lot of positions here.
Yeah, he's fortunate. He pretty much did a 360 and continued. He didn't really hit anything, but he has lost that place back to Edo. So it's been quite a crazy race. The positions have just gone up and down, left and right. And we're now coming on to the final lap for these drivers. Maulana leading the way by almost 5 seconds at the sector line. And it looks like Siswoyo is going to be getting second place from Ferris Stanley as well. So Taruna is going to be kicking himself for making that mistake in that second Degner.
Basically, the entire race defined by only 2 moves for Taruna. The move to make it up to second position and get Siswoyo out of the way, and then throwing all of that away a few laps later with letting Siswoyo and Stanley both pass down to 4th for him. So Taruna won't be happy about that. Look at how they fly over the curbs there with the Honda Civic. Really on the edge here, Ido, Ndera and Atsuka. And it seems like Ndera is locking onto Ido once again. Maybe looking up the inside here for the hairpin. He does. Ido tried to defend, but not too harsh. He didn't want to lose too much momentum up the hill there, because it is a slope up the hill here after the hairpin. And he did so wisely. He's not losing any position again. So that was well done here. But it's Andika Rama Maulana. He's underlining the sentence of him being one of the best sim racers in Indonesia, taking the win in round number 1 here at the Honda Racing Simulator Championship in an absolute fashionable way, not being contested at all, start to finish win for him, right, followed by Yarkas Asfoyo in second, and Ferris Stanley, who came third after Arvin Taruna's mistake, who only came in fourth. Ataya Kenzie will come around the corner now, crossing the line as fifth. Rahmat with one of the biggest comebacks in today's round. We're starting from the pits and finishing sixth. What a storyline for him. And this is still Ito, Indera, and Atsuka. Not sure yet who will cross the line in 10th position. It was look like Ito will get their position in front of Indera. Yep, that looks good for him. They will cross the line to finish that race.
And what a race that was. It was so difficult to make your moves stick, and then when people did make the moves, they then made mistakes. So that is something that they will have to look forward to in the next few races. But yeah, what a race that was as well. Maulana, so dominant, and you'd expect potentially with less practice for the next races that there's going to be potentially less of a domination. But who is this batting? Is Ahmad and Sateo coming into 130R, and Ahmad getting past there. However, he goes really wide, so can Sateo make a move in the final chicane, or has he lost that position for 17th and 18th? Unfortunately, not points for these guys. Or Sateo then goes wide round the final corner to finish his race. He might actually get overtaken here by someone to the line. No, that is going to be it. But yeah, Rene, what a race that was from the drivers at the front, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that as there's still 5 rounds to go in this championship.
Definitely a great start to the championship. It also shows how different racing can be while it's still entertaining and thrilling to watch, right? The AM race with a bit more motivation towards trying things out and trying to move your car up the inside to see what happens, and then the pro race where everything is about learning the weakness of your opponent and then figuring out a good way to make use of that on a very, very high level here in the Honda Racing Simulator Championship. As I said, Maulana taking the first ever win in round number 1 for the pro category. So Swoyo in second, Stanley in third, Toru in the fourth, and then Kenzie, that's the top 5. Ronaldo Ido hanging on to 10th position. That will be very happy for him, because that was not an easy one to grab.
That was certainly not easy at all, and something that's going to be even harder for these drivers is they've been driving the Matsushita Circuit for almost 1 month now, about 4 weeks since the pre-qualification opened, whereas the next race in Malaysia is only in 2 weeks' time, and then the next week after that is Silverstone. So the next 2 races, they have a lot less time to prepare, and I assume that's going to mix up the grid a little bit, and maybe we're going to see some different names at the top.
And there's nothing decided or set in stone yet in this championship, that's for sure. So many drivers today that showed that they could be on top of this championship, on top of the standings after a race. So really looking forward to the rounds coming and the more than interesting schedule and choice of racetracks. So with the Honda Civic, I'm sure we will see more great action coming away.